I want to speak about this dusty, musty, crusty African tether you see on the screen before me, who's constantly sitting up day in and day out making TikTok videos disrespectful and hateful towards our foundational Black American lineage. Now, truth be told, this dusty, musty, crusty, funky African tether is just mad that, we got a phenomenal lineage as foundational Black Americans and that he's not like us. So, the way to combat that jealousy and inadequacy that he feels in the inside is to tether onto our FBA lineage. Now, truth be told, this, Tether ain't nothing but got a white supremacist mindset, you know what I mean? And he really had me mad talking some, foundational Black Americans kill one another. We don't deserve no reparations. If we give reparations, what we gonna do with it? We already get EBT and food stamps. And first off, don't worry what we as foundational Black Americans gonna do when we get our reparations, because we gonna get our reparations, But as for you, you ain't entitled to reparations because you ain't nothing more than a dusty, musty, punk, fleeing tether. You know what I mean? And you want to talk about foundational Black Americans killing one another. Nobody's offing each other more and more cutthroat, scammy, and conniving towards one another than them tribal beefs that they got going on over there in the African continent. We as foundational Black Americans are the most on code and globally unified Black people that there are on the planet. You know what I mean? And we fight racism, white supremacy, consistently. And you other groups of people I can't say the same for. And you want to talk about us, getting EBT and assistance programs. That's a bunch of nonsense. That's a false narrative because nobody gets more assistance, welfare, this, that, and the other than your fellow immigrant tethers when they come over here. They roll the red carpet out for them, truth be told. And I got a friend that works down there at the welfare office, and she told me that this is so. You know what I mean? Then this punctified, dusty, musty, crusty African tether wants to say that we don't fight, systematic racism, white supremacy as foundational Black Americans. Like I said, we're the only group of people globally that have fought in systematic racism, white supremacy without letting our foot up off that gas pedal. We don't never let up on fighting systematic racism, white supremacy as foundational Black Americans. That's embedded in our DNA. You know what I mean? And if it hadn't been for the heroic, brave actions of our FBA ancestors and, consistently contesting racism, white supremacy, and injustice, his punctified, fleeing tether behind wouldn't even be over here sitting in America, and be able to enjoy the luxuries that our ancestors paved the way for him on having. You know what I mean? Because if we wouldn't have fought, systematic racism, white supremacy, he'd still be sitting over there in Africa, shitting in the streets, what a lot of those people are doing over there on the continent of Africa. This is why we delineate, as foundational Black Americans, because we can't get on code and come together in solidarity and unity with people like this because these people will sell us up Shit's Creek without a paddle. They ain't got no unity and codification in their homeland. They cutthroat, constantly, fleeing when the going gets tough, running scams on one another. This is just a punctified cowardice tether. And evidently, this tether ain't never heard of no chapstick. As dusty and crusty as his lips look, he should have known that, chapstick in all actuality is his friend. That would have done him a great justice to put some damn, chapstick on his lips before he decided to make a video. So I got the audio and the video of this punctified cowardice fleeing tether, and we're going to walk through and talk about this thing how we normally do, family. Fair use.
400 years in America, you still don't know or understand the playbook. Why can't we keep our resources?
We know about racism, white supremacy more than any other group on the planet that's foundational Black Americans. This is why we fight it tooth and nail without letting our foot up off that gas pedal. You other groups, got the convenience of running around fleeing everywhere. And somebody got to fight racism, white supremacy, because if ain't nobody fighting it, then the system never stops. You know what I mean? And y'all got the majority over there in Africa, but y'all just can't get it together because you're too cutthroat and conniving amongst yourselves. But let's continue.
Why Sonia Massey was unalived in her own home when she called the cops for help. It's the same reason why every single week we have a new protest. Black Lives Matter, Emmett Till, George Floyd. It's the same reason you're mass incarcerated in the nation you claimed you built, right? Because your 13th Amendment said it is illegal to be a slave unless you go to jail. Then the 14th Amendment went ahead to call you slave babies in America. So that means you're liable for jail. Do you understand? It's the same reason why, for some reason, you've been here for 400 years, but still control less than 1% of America's resources.
We never said we weren't under global systematic racism, white supremacy. You know what I mean? But the difference between us and you is we different. We fight systematic racism, white supremacy. You know what I mean? And you other groups, when the going gets tough, you tethers, y'all default programming that exists inside of y'all mind is to put on y'all flip-flops and flee. You know what I mean? So y'all ain't like us, foundational Black Americans. We still on our ancestral homeland because, like I said, somebody got to fight systematic racism, white supremacy. Everybody just can't flee, or systematic racism, white supremacy never stops. But let's continue.
The same reason, right? But you need an African to come school you on this. Ma'am, we are not only resourceful, we are resilient, because even though
You fleeing African tether, they ain't schooling not a damn thing. Y'all giving somebody a crash course lesson in, how to flee. And ain't nobody want that advice of fleeing. We as foundational Black Americans, we stand up to systematic racism, white supremacy. We don't run, coward, or fold. We don't put on, flip flops and flee all over the damn place. But let's continue.
they keep trying to extort and exploit us, we keep fighting. You all don't fight no more. You got gentrified, redlined, and all that, lynched. You got hung on trees like Christmas.
Then he says something about being resilient. I don't call fleeing all over the damn place being resilient. And he want to talk about foundational Black Americans, being hung. We never said that we weren't victims of systematic racism, white supremacy. But how about you talk about that forced labor that's going on over there in Africa right now as we speak? And, them damn African tethers, giving away their kids to traffickers, which is a bunch of nonsense, you know what I mean? And the white supremacists, they know that, play around with us FBAs if you want, we'll turn all the way up and, shut this damn thing down. You know what I mean? Because when we get out there in them streets, and hit the pavement and, turn up for racial injustice, them white supremacists get to shaking in their boots. They get scared. This is why they paint the false narrative of their, that, we tear up our own communities through rioting, and we don't, tear up our own communities. That's a false narrative. What we morally tearing up is the white supremacist communities, and they know that we get out here and turn the hell up. That's why they try to, stop that from happening and put out that false narrative of that when we get out here and, turn up for racial injustice, that we riot and loot in our own communities. We turning the hell up on the white supremacists, and that's what they in fear of. You know what I mean? Just look at the 92 LA, riots as evidence of this. You know what I mean? Black folks were turning up left and right, and I never once heard, Africans on the continent turning up for anything, fighting the white power structure over there. But what they do is lay docile and dormant and absorb abuse from them Asians and them white men that got them fleeing up all over the damn place, living in luxury while them, Africans is down there on the ground living in squalor and filth. But let's continue.
Ornaments. Even this year, a man was hung on trees like Christmas ornaments in America. And you're asking us why we lose our resources? Let me tell you this. The first resource that was stolen from Africa was you. It was you.
And that ain't telling the full picture, saying that we were stolen. You damn African tether sold our people. So after we get our reparations from the United States of America, we should come look for Africa, because y'all owe us reparations too for y'all nasty work and selling, our people, you punctified tethers. But let's continue.
And you are still being misused, right? That is why most of your men do this. Look like this. Out here letting the same people that chained you hump you, right? You went from trying to fight to become pets. You're now the white man's pets. He rolls you out where he needs someone to fight other minority groups. Right? That's all you're good.
And I know he didn't take it here, you know what I mean? And that's probably predominantly tethers, you know what I mean? Because ain't nobody more buck broken and, gets they bussy played with than, these punctified tethers. One of the stipulations is when they go to the green card office that you got to get your bussy broken in by the white supremacists. So I know this cowardly tether didn't want to take it here, because that's one of the stipulations in these dusty, musty, crusty, punctified tethers getting a green card is, they must be buck broken. But let's continue.
Good for fighting minority groups on behalf of the white men. That's all you've ever done. You fought the Mexicans, fought Jamaicans, fought Caribbean, fought Africans, fought Asians, everyone except your oppressor.
Yeah, we fight these dusty tethers and, the white supremacists alike. We as foundational Black Americans, we can multitask. We ain't going to sit around here and let, these tether groups, undermine us. You damn right we're going to give, pushback and resistance to the tether class and the white supremacists. We can multitask, you know what I mean? And this is why we say FBAs versus everybody, because, we've had no allies, and we FBAs have been the only consistent group to fight racism, white supremacy. You other groups just conveniently flee whenever the going gets tough.
Everyone except your oppressor. You fought everyone except your oppressor, and that is why your civil rights were taken away. I apologize, but that is why your civil rights were taken away. Because you are being civil with inhumane policies in America. And you out here asking us why we lose our resources. Let me tell you why. Because without our resources, the white tea daddies you serve will be on.
You lose your resources because you too punctified, cowardly, and docile and dormant over there in Africa, and you let the racist white supremacists and the Asian class come in there and run amok. You know what I mean? Y'all ain't got no unity and codification. You know what I mean? And y'all can't get it together over there. Y'all too cutthroat amongst each other. And y'all can't, put away y'all damn tribal beefs and come in cold and solidarity with one another. You know what I mean? Long enough to get the racist white supremacists and the Asian foot up off y'all neck. Y'all, you know what I mean? Y'all flee when the going gets tough, and y'all got the majority over there. You know what I mean? If we foundational Black Americans had the majority, we'd have been knocked down systematic racism, white supremacy. You know what I mean? But y'all just flee when the going gets tough, and that's a damn shame because y'all the minority. It shows how disunified and not on code y'all are over there in Africa. But let's continue.
Unable to pay for your food stamps and housing. So just look at it this way. Africans, let them take the resources because we love you and we don't want you to starve and be homeless in America. So we let them take it so they can come feed you, house you, educate you, transport you, then marginalize you. Okay? That's why.
Hold on, family. That wasn't.
And we don't want you to starve.
He said they let him come take the resources. You ain't got a truth. You ain't got a choice in the matter because y'all too punctified and cowardice. Y'all ain't coming on cold and getting and coming in solidarity and unity with one another long enough to get the white supremacist foot on your neck. So you ain't got a choice in the matter. Well, you do got a choice, but you're too punctified and cowardice, to stand up against racism, white supremacy, and injustice. Instead, you flee over here to the land FBAs building, sit there popping off fly at the mouth. And if it hadn't been for the bravery and heroic actions of our FBA ancestors fighting racism, white supremacy for all groups of people, your nasty, musty, dusty, crusty behinds wouldn't even be over here in America. But let's continue.
Africans, let them take the resources because we love you and we don't want you to starve and be homeless in America. So we let them take it so they can come feed you, house you, educate you, transport you, then marginalize you. Okay? That's why. 400 years in America.
Yeah, family, this is a dusty, musty, crusty Tether who kept, saying some false narrative of us foundational Black Americans getting EBT, this, that, and the other. Ain't nobody gets more EBT and a leg up to his fellow immigrant Tethers when they come over here. They roll the red carpet out for them, and they ain't fighting out a damn thing. And, regards to systematic racism, white supremacy, when the going gets tough, they flee, because they too punctified and cowardice. And, they don't fight systematic racism, white supremacy. If we foundational Black Americans had the majority, we'd have been knocked down systematic racism, white supremacy, and injustice. And that's a damn shame they got the majority over there, and can't come together and get, come on code and solidarity and unity to do so. And but until then, we as foundational Black Americans, we still going, fight systematic racism, white supremacy, and the damn tether class, such as this tether, musty, dusty, crusty, you see on the screen before me, who didn't know that they made chapstick. You know what I mean? And we ain't like these people, you know what I mean? Because we're the only group of people that consistently fought systematic racism, white supremacy, without letting up or letting our foot up off that gas pedal. This is why we always say that us FBAs versus everybody, we know how to multitask, and this includes the tethers and the white supremacists alike. Just my thoughts on the matter. Peace.